Staff, visitors and everybody watching on the live streaming will declare the meeting open. The City of Swan disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for an approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until written notice of either an approval and the conditions which relate to it or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the Council's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in a meeting during public question time, public statement time, it is assumed that your consent is being given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured. In conditions of entry, no electronic, visual or audio recording or transmitting device or instrument is permitted to be used. A person that breaches this provision of the City of Swan Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 will be required to immediately leave the premises. Attendance's apologies. At this point in time, I have no leave of absence, Mr. CEO, is that correct?
Everyone is present.
Okay. You've received a request for leave, though?
Yes, but we treat that later on.
Okay. Apologies. I have nil. Declarations of financial and proximity interest and interest affecting partiality. Councillor Richards declared an impartiality in item B 3.5 as she is a neighbour opposite the property. Councillor Kiley has disclosed on the same item that he is an executive of the Guildford Association and may have contributed a submission. Councillor Parrott disclosed an interest affecting impartiality on B 3.6 as has previously worked with the manager. Councillor Zanino disclosed an interest affecting partiality in item C 1.4 as his business partner owns land on the Crescent Midland. Are there any other declarations from staff or councillors? None. Public question time. Questions and answers recorded in the minutes of the meeting may be summarised in accordance with Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. Questions and answers marked with an asterisk have been amended, either for the purpose of summarising, e.g. removing preambles, statements, etc., or editing. 5.1. Answers to questions to be taken on notice. Have questions from Mr Bob Ellsbury, Ms Naomi Jenkins, Ms Karen Mowat, Mr Bob Baku, Mr David Willer, Mrs Kelly Willer, that have been answered and the answers are provided. 5.2 is questions relating to reports on the agenda. 5.2.1 questions which due notice have been given, I have nil. 5.2.2 questions without notice. Any questions from anyone in the gallery on the agenda? No. Other questions? 5.3.1 questions which due notice has been given. Questions from Mr Bob Knight.
Dave Knight.
Dave Knight. Mr and Mrs McStay, Mr Bob Ellsbury have all been answered with the exception of question 5 from Mr Ellsbury, which is taken on notice.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
In relation to page 9, questions by Mr Ellsbury, his question 4 starts with all City of Swan councillors maintain a Facebook and other social media accounts. I'd like to inform Mr Ellsbury that I do not have social media or a Facebook account. Just for his information, thank you.
Okay. See, some of us do. Okay, as I said, question 5 has been taken on notice. Questions from Miss Naomi Jenkins, Miss Karen Mowat.
Mr Mayor, above page 10, our last question from Mr Bob Ellsbury. I think Council needs to answer that question, Mr Mayor.
Okay, all right. Councillors, the question is, are any businesses owned or operated by any City of Swan councillor receiving any benefit from the City of Swan COVID-19 hardship policy? To get out of the way, councillors wish to answer that question?
No.
No one?
No.
Okay, that's your answer.
No, I'm not.
So the answer
is no.
We'll record that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, back to where we were. Joe Cicchini and Ms Steph Radis have been answered. Further questions for Mr Dave Knight. With the exception of question 1, which has been taken on notice, the others have been answered. Ms Jenny Pattinson, question's been answered. That takes us to 5.3.2, questions without notice. Any questions from the public gallery? None. Public statement time. I have one two recorded public statements at this time. Firstly is Mr Stephen Lowe on item number 4.1, the proposed closure of a pedestrian access way between Bailey Place and Brockmill Avenue in Beachborough. Mr Lowe, are you with us? Yes. Would you just like to come to the microphone?
Yes, 2 minutes.
Turn it on, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Steve Lowe. I live in Brockmill Avenue, Beachborough. Since moving into the house in 1987, we have had ongoing and continuing problems with the pedestrian access way alongside the house. There have been a number of attempts to have it closed over the years. Failing for different reasons, including one where we actually got council approval, and none of the people residing there, we were all raising young families at the time and unable to afford it. So by the time we could afford it, it had lapsed. So we're back going through this process again. On many occasions, the people in the property are having stolen property thrown in over the fences, attacks on household members. In August of last year, my daughter was assaulted in front of the house when she caught people jumping our fence and then smashing a retaining wall, jumping over the fence and then smashing a retaining wall. She went to confront them and was attacked in front of the house, which is why I suddenly came to this level again. I myself have been attacked and spent some time in hospital, an attack on that lane. My neighbours have continually, and I have continually had fences destroyed, property broken, vandalised, vandalised. There's so much broken glass from people throwing bottles down the laneway, or kids throwing bottles down the laneway to see if they watch them smash, that if you step off the drainway, you're in danger of cutting your feet.
Thank you, Mr Lowe. That's your 2 minutes. Thank you. Now, under petitions, we have a Ms Siobhan Vincent, who may wish to do a public statement, and you have 2 minutes, Ms Vincent. Thank you. Push it till the red light comes on.
Good evening, Mr Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, councillors. This is a matter that has been simmering along for quite some time, and Mr McAllister, who's here with me, is the architect of the plans that I sent to you by email. Councillor Predovnik would not have received that because her email keeps bouncing back, but I shall continue to try. It's a lot of material to digest. I personally feel that to put this petition to you within very short parameters would be entirely inappropriate, and that a proper briefing would be more appropriate. And indeed, that is the response that various of the councillors has sent. The Midland Performing Arts and Community Centre is a project that has been under discussion for some considerable period of time, but on each occasion that anyone has indicated, whether federally or at state level, that funding could be forthcoming for it, they have all required the imprimatur of the City of Swan as a stakeholder in this project. It would not do it proper service to be able to discuss with you in a 2 minute time frame the advantages of having a facility such as this in the Midland precinct. Suffice it to say, though, that it provides the opportunity to afford to Midland a community centre, a recreational centre. And what I'm going to leave you with within this 2 minute time frame is my experience at Mandurah Performing Arts Centre when I moved into that estuary, walked in there, and the capstone of that community recreational space was the theatre. There were people in restaurants, there were people riding bicycles, there were prams. It was a Saturday afternoon and the place was fully engaged with people recreating under the shadow of that magnificent construction. Walking in, I saw grappling irons hanging from the roof, which were there to facilitate circus for disengaged youth. There were large drop sheets over huge bench tables for Indigenous children to learn dot painting. There was dance for Parkinson's sufferers, and there was an interactive art play group.
Thank you, Ms Vincent. That's
Thank you.
a bit over your 2 minutes, actually gave you a bit.
I am
Now,
sorry.
while I do have you there, you may not have heard back from city staff late this afternoon
I have.
in regards to coming to council to do a briefing.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so that can be arranged in due course when we can schedule it. No,
Thank you, sir.
contact you.
I think that that would be
Yep.
the most appropriate step forward.
but we can still accept your petition.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that, councillors, takes us to
Miss-
item 7, which is
Miss-
petitions.
Mr Mayor, I've got a question through you.
Well, we don't have questions at public statement time, councillor, I'm sorry.
Mr Mayor, I've got a petition.
Well, can I get to it?
Go ahead.
Because I already have 2 to deal with. So 7.1 is a petition containing 491 signatures against the proposed use of the land at Lot 12, number 2533 Great Northern Highway, currently used as a hardware store, to be used as a Vibe service station. 7.2 is the petition containing 17 signatures requesting the City Council form an advisory group comprising councillors, community and interested professionals, develop the local performing arts community. And we'll accept those. Any councillors or staff with another petition? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This petition is from the Midland Society and it says, to the Mayor and all City of Swan councillors, we the undersigned being residents of the City of Swan say, we call on the City of Swan to recognise the historic and cultural significance to the Midland community of the following properties: 30, 32 and 39 Byers Road, 60, 65 and 68 Sayer Street, 50 North Street, 10 Frederick Street, 20 Elvira Street, 49, 59 and 61 Morrison Road, 49 Spring Park Road and 18 Stafford Street, Midland. We request that these houses are independently and expertly assessed for the inclusion on the local government inventory so as to provide these places with an appropriate level of heritage protection, and it's signed by 132 signatures.
Thank you. Any other petitions? Thank you. Those petitions will become part of a report. Councillor Scanlon, you want to move for deferral, but you don't need to do that now because we'll come back. There are no deputations. Announcements by the presiding member, and the first one I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It's my privilege to announce that the City of Swan has once again been recognised as a Gold Waterwise Council. City joined the program in 2015 and first achieved gold status in 2017. This was an incredible and significant achievement given the growth of the city, the increase of our population, parks, reserves and sporting fields. Throughout all of this growth, the city has maintained our total water consumption below the target. Some of the key projects which help achieve us this rating include Rural Properties Revegetation Program, where the city provides free trees to residents, growing the city's friendship groups and catchment groups, and the restoration of the Emu Lake wetlands, including the installation of floating vegetation panels to improve natural filtration and water qualities. So congratulations to the staff at the City of Swan for working so hard to ensure our use of water is sustainable and well managed. And there's the certificate that announces we're once again a gold award winner from the Waterwise Council. So well done, City of Swan.
Thank you. Well done. Further announcement. On the 18th of August, the City welcomed 4 West Australian Trade Commissioners representing countries of India, China, Japan and Indonesia. City staff and I spent the day travelling around the City of Swan, highlighting investment and trade opportunities to the Commissioners and JTSI Department, which is Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation. In particular, we visited New Junction Project, local cafe Sid and Phyllis in the workshop precincts, Curtin University Medical School, Hazelmere Industrial Area, Malaga Industrial and Commercial Area, local aged care facilities, Bullsbrook Industrial and Freight Precinct and the Swan Valley. The purpose of the tour was to demonstrate new opportunities in the city of Swan and to better understand the policy settings and political direction of each representative nation. I received an email from one of those delegates this week thanking us for that, and very much highlighted what opportunities she can take back to her country representation. Finally, the Homelessness Summit on the 8th of August, the City of Swan Rotary in the City of Swan hosted a homelessness forum to shine the light on the issues in the Midland area. The event was well attended with Ministers Ken Wyatt, Simone McGurk and Michelle Roberts speaking to a sold-out crowd in the Town Hall. Councillors will recall a recent motion highlighting the issue of homelessness in Midland. I'm pleased to announce that we are making inroads in that regard, with city staff working with local providers and the Minister for Communities. A number of meetings between these parties are taking place this month and the next few weeks with the intent to elevate the conversation into a policy space. Members' questions, 10.1, questions for which were taken on notice, I have nil. Questions for which due notice was given, I have questions from Councillor Johnson. Those answers are in the green folder. Councillor, you'll see those. 10.3, questions of which due notice has not been given. Any questions from councillors?
I've got one, Mr Mayor, through you.
Councillor Goldnick and Councillor Collington.
I'm sort of in the corner here. Just a quick one. I think the lady who spoke mentioned that she'd sent me an email and I didn't get it. Can I get a bit more information about that? I don't know why things are bouncing back.
Well, you can pass it down the line
please.
and it's done. Save the email. Yep. Okay. Yep. Might have been just a simple. We'll do that. Thank you. Okay. Councillors. Councillor Congleton, you're first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask the following questions and address them to Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, why are you asking the same questions regarding the EEC on page 20 of the agenda, given the answers were provided to you on the 5th of the 6th, 2019? You can take these on notice if you wish, Councillor. That's the first question.
Carry on.
The second question is that ECC is one of the hardest working group of volunteers in the City of Swan. Do you know why they are constantly being questioned on their activities, and in particular yourself? Question 3. Questions seem to be deliberately framed with an inference of impropriety to ECC, committee and or its members. Are your questions a deliberate witch hunt on this group? And the fourth question is, are you and others deliberately trying to discredit your fellow councillors who work as volunteers for ECC every day to help the community?
Mayor, can I just
Councillor
ask where
Johnson.
these questions are? Sorry, page 20, did you say?
He's asked them the questions without notice. They're not in the agenda.
Sorry.
No, mine are questions without notice. And I am making reference to page 20, where the question is question.
You got it tonight.
Question 4 on page 20.
20.
Mr Mayor, as I'm being asked these questions, I can't find them.
I can't find them either.
No, the questions are questions without notice
Without
by a
notice.
member.
understand that, but what are they referring to? What are you talking about?
Sorry,
Okay.
are you the presiding officer I need to respond to, or do I respond to the chair? Sorry, just asking. The questions, I've articulated the questions, Mr Mayor.
You have, Councillor, questions without notice. They are not in a green folder. And Councillor Congleton's
on
first
page
question
20.
related to question 4 on page number 20 of the green folder. Councillor Johnson, you can answer these questions or take them on notice.
Page 20.
Haven't got it.
Councillor Kylie, if you go to page 20 of this green folder,
Yes.
page 20, and
Question
go
4.
1/3 down the page, you will note there is question 4. And it says, how much of the Ellenbrook Place budget was paid to the ECC in 217/218? Thank you.
Respond. Taking on notice, Councillor
I
Johnson.
don't need to take some notice, Mr. Mayor. It says here, question 4, how much of the Allenbrook Place budget was paid to the ECC? And the answer is $6,957. So that's the answer. Thank you.
I don't think it was.
The city staff.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respects, I asked 4 questions, not just one.
You're going to answer them all, or do you want to take them on notice? I'll get Councillor Congan to email them to you, Councillor, and you can respond.
No, Mr. Mayor, I think the answer is simply this. I think it's well established that a councillor is entitled to ask questions about grants made to community organisations using ratepayers' funds. It's been well established by the Department of Local Government that that is well within the scope of a councillor's role, and such questions are entirely appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my answer to all 4 questions.
Mr. Mayor, I will enter the questions in for the next agenda to get a written answer on either all 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richardson, you got a question?
Mine's very confidential agenda questions, so...
I think you better wait till we get there. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, councillors? None. Item 11 is leave of absence. Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, I've had a request from Councillor Perry for leave of absence from the 25th of September to the 10th of October, and a request from Councillor Jones for leave of absence from the 29th of August to the 1st of September. Mr. Mayor.
Any other leaves of absence? Can I move that they be approved? Councillor Zanino, seconded Councillor Lucas. Is there anyone against? Declare those carried. Confirmations of minutes. 12.1 is confirmations of special meeting held on the 22nd of July, and 12.2 confirmation of minutes of OCM on the 29th of July. Move that they be accepted. Move Councillor Congdon.
With the officer's comment, Mr. Mayor, and the recommendation as per there.
Yep, thank you, Mr. So further, there's below there a comment on the 29th of July, an amendment to a question asked by Mr. Baku.
Can I ask a question, please?
Question?
Relating to that recommendation there. Sorry, I just don't know what that relates to. Confirm the minutes, subject to the answer 3. But what was this? What was the question? What's the answer? Answer 3 from Mr. Bob Ellsbury as follow. What was the actual
Mr.
question
CEO?
that answer is relating to?
Ask.
Ms. Leahy, you might have that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that related to a question about the costs incurred for the refurbishment of the operations centre.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I had a mover there. That was moved by Councillor Lucas and seconded Councillor Johnson. No one against that. Carried. 13 becomes business left over from previous meeting. 13.3. Councillor Zanino.
13.2, I think. You want to start with, don't you?
Can do.
Go to the next one.
Slide to the next one, see if that one works.
Now try.
There you go.
Mine is not.
You got something on 13.2
It's
as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Before we get on to 13.3, I'd like to say 13.2, if that can be withdrawn from the items, because after speaking to Mr. Phil Russell, I understand that this, what has been asked of the applicants has occurred to the satisfaction of the planners and can now be approved under delegated authority with the blessing of the council. So
Okay, thank
I'd
you.
like it.
Councillor, can I have a seconder? Councillor Parry. Is anyone against? Declare that carried. Thank you, Councillor. And now item 13.3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the council resolve to 1. Grant approval for the existing caretaker's dwelling on Lot 7, number 16, Old 2J Road, Gidgegannup, subject to the following conditions. A. The approval or the approved caretaker's dwelling is to comply in all respects with the attached approved plans as dated, marked and stamped, together with any requirements and annotations detailed therein by the City of Swan. The plans approved as part of this application form part of the development approval issued. B. The approved caretaker's dwelling shall only be inhabited by the owner/operator of the exhibition centre, be a museum. C. A notification pursuant to Section 70A of the Transfer of Land Act 1893 is to be placed on the certificate or certificates of title of Lot 7, number 16, Old 2J Road, Gidgegannup, advising current and future landowners that the property is located in a bushfire-prone area. 2. Record the reason for changing the recommendation is that the proposed caretaker's dwelling is within an existing approved building that is already exposed to the BEL FZ rating.
Thank you. Have a seconder. Councillor Scanlon. Is there anyone against? I saw her first, Councillor. There's no one against. Declare that carried. Councillors, that takes us to Part B. There was one item withdrawn. Item 3.6 is the State Administrative Tribunal reconsideration of the refusal of proposed classroom additions to an existing place of worship, Lot 101, number 25, Sussex Street, Caversham, and Councillor Zanino.
Mayor, you need to do 13.4, but we'll come back to it. Tree removal, 8 James Street. You've got to deal with it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sorry, councillors, we need to deal with item 13.4 as well.
On starts on page 82 and goes to page 87. This is the tree removal in Guildford. Need someone to move it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I move Councillor Scanlon, seconded Councillor Kiley. Anyone against? Declare that carried. Now, Councillor Zanino, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, once again I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Refuse the application for the proposed classroom additions to the existing place of worship at Lot 101, number 25, Suffolk Street, Caversham, for the following reason. A. The application is considered to be inconsistent with the objectives D of the Swan Valley Rural Zone applicable to the land in that it is not considered to accord with the planning objectives 8.1, 8.3, 8.4, 8.6 and 8.7 of the Swan Valley Planning Act 1995, as it does not assist with the protection of the viticulture nor complement the rural character of the locality. 2. Advise the applicant that it is prepared to support a modified application that reduces the proposed classroom additions within a single-storey building to no more than 3 classrooms, not exceeding a combined total floor space of 150 square metres in area. And 3, delegate to the Chief Executive Officer authority to grant approval to the application so modified in accordance with Resolution 2 above, subject to conditions that the Chief Executive Officer's discretion.
Okay. Seconder. Councillor Kiley, is there anyone against? There is. Wish to debate it? I assume so. Councillor Kiley, Councillor Zanino, open to debate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, we all know and are fully aware of the background and history of the application for the Chin Christian Church, and now we have a new application which was for the 8 classrooms. Given the prominent location on the main tourist drive and being in Area B of the Swan Valley Planning Act means that the church and the classrooms are highly visible from 3 sides, the north, the south and the east, as the west is protected by a bund. As you're all aware, this type of development is totally contrary to the Planning Act and its objectives, as I have stated. Approving 8 classrooms in this location is out of the question, but given the Chin Christian Church is existing, I think that approving the 3 classrooms should be adequate and allows the Chin Christian Church to have their religious instructions or Sunday school. Therefore, I urge you to support my motion to approve only 3 classrooms with the appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Councillor Kiley, as a seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I rise to support Councillor Zanino's motion. It is a good compromise, councillors. This is the Swan Valley we're talking about. It's not outside of the valley. We need to protect the valley, and it is not consistent with the objectives of the Swan Valley Planning Act in most part. So I encourage you to vote for this. As I said, it's a good compromise, and I think we've been very considerate of the needs for the classrooms. However, we need also to balance that against the protection of the Swan Valley. So please vote for this motion. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went for a visit to the church on Sunday, and I have dropped some photographs around on the various desks to share. And currently in situ is 5 very small rooms that these children participate in their church teaching activities. And they have one breakout area of outside of the actual assembly room. The number of students currently there can only operate for the classroom teachings 50% of them at any one time, because the rooms don't accommodate the number of students, and we're talking somewhere in the numbers of 240 to 260 students. There is a discussion that talks about the site and its visual aspects from 3 locations. The pastor house on one side blocks at almost everything. The pastor house is a lovely looking development, but it does block one side out. The land that goes across to West Swan Road, they have planted now 80 olive trees to protect the visual amenity from West Swan Road. And whilst those trees at the moment aren't at full height, nevertheless they have been planted and they are sitting with you now. This application for the extra classrooms is not going to be a blight on the area at all. I drive up and down West Swan Road lots of times, and I could probably tell you guys there's lots of large sheds, more of a blight than there is on this particular church. The Chin Society and family members should be allowed to teach their children Christian values in this setting, and they shouldn't be pushed into an area of 150 square metres to try and teach over 240 children. It's not appropriate. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors, in October 2014, the council unanimously carried to allow the Chin Church to finally have a home that they claim as their own. Councillor Zanino was the mayor at this point in time. He was leading the council. Now he's voting against the school structures to be built. The case law is very clear about whether the Sunday school is incidental or not. As observed in Brando v City of Gosnells, there needs to be some kind of relationship between the dominant use and the incidental use. That is, the incidental use must form part of the naturally attached to the dominant use. In the City of Swan v Taylor 2005, Her Honour Johnson found that the determination of whether a use was incidental. It requires the identification of predominant use and a determination of whether the proposed use is consequent on such a use or naturally attaching or relating to such a use. In my view, there must be a relationship or connection between the two uses for one to be incidental to the other. In this instance, as noted above, there is no question that the place of worship is the predominant use of the land. In this case, the design and the nature of the proposed Sunday school is such that it is in fact operation subservient to the predominant place of worship use. It cannot and will not operate without the main place of worship operating. That is, the Sunday school must be regarded as part and parcel of the place of worship use, and as a result, no separate or distinct land use is required for the assessment purposes. It is to be considered under the place of worship use, and as outlined earlier, an extension to that use. Let's remember that the approval for the church was in October 2014, councillors. The City of Swan case was in 2005. With all due respect, I do strongly believe that someone of Councillor Zanino's experience would be aware of this. The next point is this. The EGM of Planning, who is doing an excellent job, by the way, stated in no uncertain terms that he believes that the Sunday school is incidental. So far, the 2014 Council approved the main purpose of the land. The courts have determined what is incidental, and our EGM of Planning believes that the building is for incidental use. So let's discuss the current situation of the Sunday school councillors. Councillors, the rooms are not adequate for what they are trying to do, hence why the federal government is trying to fund them. Councillors, this is a Sunday school for a community who are trying to improve their lives. I often hear the need of inclusion with this chamber, yet certain councillors who talk about this issue the loudest voted against this issue last time. Currently, the Chin community are doing 1 week on and 1 week off for their children. Do you think that's fair? I don't. In conclusion, in 2014, the council, including Councillor Zanino, allowed the establishment of the church, yet now he thinks it's a step too far to have the Sunday school in the same location. The courts have clearly identified and defined what incidental is. The EGM of Planning agreed that the building is incidental. Our briefing notes say it too. The Chin community needs to expand the buildings. The federal government has basically paid for it. What is there left to say and do to get this done? One more thing. The cost of going to SAT is $60,000. How much is it going to be if it goes to trial? That is the question when asked. Do you think that is good value for ratepayers' money? Thank you very much.
Councillor Parry. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Henderson.
Briefly, Mayor and councillors, much of this has already been covered, but I do want to perhaps highlight one other, shall we say, expensive SAT issue for this city. Shalom House cost the city, by the time it went to SAT and to court and the rest of it, significant sums of money for what some believe was an acceptable use and others did not. In this case, it's quite clear. It's an approvable use. So I think if we want to end up fighting this, if we say no tonight, we're going to end up in SAT representing it, the issue of the council, with significant costs, which may well indeed escalate well above if we end up with multiple appeals. So that's the first issue I wanted to come to. The other one is that do we know what their needs are? Can we tell them what their needs are? They've told us what they need, and there's a proposal to halve, more than halve, what they need. That doesn't work for me. They've worked out what their needs are, which are an approvable use. So given that, I think we have a responsibility to assess it on fair grounds. SAT have asked us to reassess it, and whilst I have been against many of these things over the years, I have to say that they have an approved use, so they should be allowed to utilise their approved use with their ancillary requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speaker for the motion. Expose an amendment. I'll hear your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose to Councillor Zanino a small amendment to his motion to allow for a single-storey building to no more than 4 classrooms, not exceeding a total combined floor space of 200 square metres in the area.
Contrary.
Sorry?
Moving the seconder.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor.
I believe the proposed motion is contrary because Councillor Scan is moving an approval for 4 classrooms where Councillor Zanino is for refusal.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I should have clarified that. It is to refuse the application for the proposed classroom, and it's part 2.
To clarify that, advise the applicant council is prepared to support a modified application that reduces the proposed classrooms additions with a single-storey building to no more than 4 classrooms, not exceeding 200 square metres.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'd like to propose.
I will allow that. So
Thank you.
Moving the seconder. No, I'm looking for a seconder. I'm asking the mover and the seconder. So it's fine with the mover and the seconder. In that case, that becomes the amended motion. Now, back to where we were. Speaker for the motion. Speaker for the motion. A question?
Just a question for Councillor Congleton. If the current totals that you've got approximately 240 to 260 children attending at the moment, what's the likelihood of the increase in the future, and what plans have they got for the great influx that they're having and success for increasing their classes on a Sunday?
Without being flippant, I'd be a very bold man to express the future birth rate that might go through that establishment. I really can't answer that question. At the moment, that's what they're telling me. I've got to take that on the face value. I really can't tell you how it will progress in the future.
Okay, back to it. Any speakers for the motion? Speakers against? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. Most of what I was going to say has already been said by those opposing the motion, but I'd like to refer all councillors to page 181, which is the landscaping plan for the church. I doubt very much anyone, unless they're driving into that driveway, would know there's any type of structures built on that property. It's the same as when you drive down Great Northern Highway. If there wasn't a sign out the front of Dream Builders, you wouldn't know there's a church at the end of the driveway. But what I want to convey to the proponents of the Chin Church is that I'll be insisting that all the landscaping goes in. And there's a very large block of land on the corner of Suffolk and West Swan Road, which is yet to be developed, which will further negate the vision from West Swan Road. You can't see it from the south now because of the new pasture in the Valley building. And once that landscaping goes in, you wouldn't even know there'd be a building on that site. Thank you. So I can't support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Any further speakers? Councillor Johnson speaking.
Yeah, for the motion, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Mr Mayor, having time now to read this in a bit more detail. It is actually proposing something really useful. It's basically delegating to the CEO the authority to grant an approval for this for classroom capability. It's for classroom development. So in effect, we're reducing it in size by 50%, which is a compromise between the needs of the Swan Valley and the recent change to the planning scheme. I think the scheme amendment and the needs of the church. I guess one getting into the details of just how many children there are and how many classrooms there are, and whether you need to do age separation in Sunday schools, would take me back to when I was a little boy at Sunday school, and I do seem to recall that there were multiple classes running in the same room. So I think it is quite achievable to have multiple ages in multiple rooms. So I think this is quite doable, I think, with 4 classrooms. So I suggest, councillors, that it's a good compromise between the needs of the Chin Church, which are entirely in line with, I guess, our cultural objectives, community objectives, and the need to preserve the Swan Valley. So that's why I'm supporting Councillor Zanino's motion, because it's delegating to the CEO the authority to grant approval for 4 classrooms. I think that's great. So that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any other speakers? No. Councillor Zanino, you'll close the debate, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to be brief. I think the emphasis here has been that the landscaping, and that a large amount of landscaping has been put in and will obviously screen it. I agree, that's 100%. But the note that I would like to make is that the Chin Church has been there for 6 years, and they had 6 years to put in the landscaping, and by now that landscaping, the trees, the shrubs, whatever, would have been fairly mature and would have already started screening. And the only reason why the Chin Church has now put in such a grandiose landscaping plan is because they need the classrooms approved. But I applaud them. I mean, they should have done it years ago. Councillors, I'm going to just leave it at that. 4 classrooms, is more than a reasonable compromise, and I ask you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zeno. Now put the vote. Those in favour? Yes, Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor McNamara, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Scanlon, Councillor Richardson. That's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The rest are against. The motion is lost. Okay, do we have an officer's recommendation?
Mr. Mayor,
Now I need someone to move the officer's recommendation. Move Councillor Parry.
Yep.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? There isn't. That carried. Do you want to debate or just record that you're against? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, if you could record that, Danica. There's one against. Okay. 41. That takes care of all the items, item B, so I need a motion to adopt those recommendations contained in items not withdrawn. Moved Councillor Congdon, second Councillor McCulloch. Anyone against? Okay, those carried. Councillors as previous advised, and now move to the confidential items. I need a motion to go behind closed doors. Moved Councillor Parry and second Councillor Jones. No one against. We are now behind closed doors. If I could ask the members of the gallery to please vacate. Live streaming be turned off, Danica. Yeah. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. As we're now moving to Part C of the agenda, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that if we don't finish all items in Part C tonight, that we adjourn this meeting at 7:30 p.m. tonight, and all unfinished items will be carried over to the September ordinary council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder? I have a seconder in Councillor McCulloch. Is anyone against? Okay, that be carried. So we will finish at 7:30, councillors. Any remaining items be carried over to the September meeting. Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Okay, Councillor Johnson, C 1.1.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to change this one very slightly, Mr. Mayor, because the report indicates that the situation is a little bit different to what I expected. So what I'm proposing to do is to change it along these lines. So I want it to read that Council resolved to require the CEO to, and here is the change, to create a city policy. So instead of to review, to create a city policy. On LGA section 5.5, payments to employees. And I think we can actually end it there. I think, and to report to Council by October 2020. So, actually, no, we'll just end it there, Mr. Mayor. So that Council resolved to require the CEO to create a city policy on LGA section 5.5, payments to employees, full stop.
Reason?
The reason, because the Local Government Act requires such a policy, and we don't have one.
Seconder? Seconder. CEO, do we not already have such a policy?
We do, Mr. Mayor. It's internal.
It's internal management policy.
Yes.
Okay. Is anyone against?
As per the comments.
As per the comments below. Okay. Is anyone against?
Mr. Mayor.
Question?
If we've got a policy, what are we trying to achieve through this motion? Is it to make the policy public, and or is it not already public? Can I get some clarification, please?
Well, if you'd ask that to Councillor Johnson, he's a mover.
I'm actually asking a question, Mayor. I'm asking it of the CEO, if you don't mind.
Well, I think you asked what the intention of the motion was.
I'm asking, is this current policy either confidential? Is it in the public realm?
Okay, that's better. Mr. CEO?
Mr. Mayor, if you read the description on page 315, it sets out, the section 550 sets out exactly the circumstances. The powers delegated to me in the city's delegation of authority register in this regard. And Mr. Mayor, as indicated, we haven't made any payments since 1995 when it was first introduced, Mr. Mayor.
There you go, Councillor Coley. Any further question? Yes, no? In that case.
So for clarification, Mayor, there's effectively two sets of policies. There's the public ones, which are the council's ones, and there's the internal operating policies. Is that correct, CEO? Well,
it is. This is under council's delegation of authority. This is delegated to me, and we've never used it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Right, ask the other question. Anyone against? Councillor McCulloch is against. Do you wish to debate it? I don't wish to. Okay. In that case, I'll put it straight to vote. Those in favour? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Scanlon, Councillor Richardson. All the rest are against. The motion fails.
Question, Mr Mayor. I don't have a problem with that, but I'd just like to ask a question. Surely that means we're in breach of the Act? Because we've now voted not to have a policy. It's in contravention to 5.5.
As I said, Mr Mayor, you've delegated that to me to deal with, and that's what I've been dealing under the Act, Mr Mayor. It's a delegation, and we have to review that delegation, I think, every 12 months, Ms Leigh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr CEO. That takes us to Councillor Keller. Well, we finished with the item, councillors.
I just want to ask a question about that particular policy that's been delegated. Is it
Why didn't you
available?
ask it during the debate?
There was no
Why
debate.
didn't you ask it? Why didn't you ask it last week when you had the opportunity to agenda for it?
Well, it's just a question that might actually assist
I'll
councillors.
allow it this time, but I'd expect next time you use the agenda for them for what they're designed for. So ask your question.
Okay, so the policy, the internal policy, is that available to councillors to peruse?
Ms Leigh.
Ms Leigh?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we can distribute that to councillors for review.
Thank you. Now, that takes us now to C or 1.2. Councillor Coley, the Bennett Springs train station.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, my motion is that Council resolve to 1. Direct the CEO on behalf of the Council to write to the Minister for Transport and Planning to A. Requesting the construction of the proposed passenger rail station marked Bennett Springs East on the Metronet website be undertaken concurrent to the Malaga, Whiteman Park and Ellenbrook stations or as soon as feasible, and B. That the State Government undertake community consultation to seek public input for a new name for the proposed Bennett Springs East station. The reasons for this motion are 1. To increase employment opportunities for local workers as part of the COVID recovery program. 2. Ensure public infrastructure keeps pace with residential growth and urban infill targets. 3. Minimise residential impact during construction. 4. Achieve cost savings by incorporating works into a single contract. And 5. Encourage community input into a local landmark with a name that is appropriate for the area.
Seconder? Councillor Catalano.
Mr Mayor, I wish to make an amendment, sir.
Move an amendment. Okay.
Yep. For Part C, can we add down the bottom, request that the State Government complete a feasibility study for a proposed passenger rail station at Henley Brook / Morgan Fields.
I believe it's contrary to the motion. I would suggest you put that in as a separate motion at another time.
Just
but
don't
I just
accept it, Councillor.
don't accept it. Thank you.
The seconder? What do you say? Okay. Last question again. Is anyone against? Anyone against?
Question.
Question.
Does the mover have some consideration of the amount of time that this might add to the project?
You were getting into debate, but I believe that
Ask your question.
I think that there are plenty of companies out there that would be willing to take on the work, and I don't think it would halt the time delivery of the whole project at all. So, yes, I do. I don't believe it's a factor in this consideration.
Okay. Councillors, I will draw your attention to the second paragraph, or the second last paragraph. The City is working with Metronet team to facilitate development of this precinct with the WA Planning Commission already creating a planning control area of the precinct, etc., etc., etc. So I think most of what you're saying is already in play. I'll ask the question again. Is there anyone against? Wish to debate it, Councillor McCulloch? No, I don't. You don't?
I do, Mr Mayor.
I didn't ask which you want to debate it, Councillor. Councillor,
I'm against Mr Mayor and I do want to vote it.
would you like to speak first?
Mover needs to go.
Sorry, don't play games with me, Councillor. Councillor Kiley, open debate.
Mayor, I would like the motion put. I think it makes imminent sense to proceed with this letter, and I encourage all councillors to.
The motion be put.
Well, I'm just speaking to the motion. If Councillor Johnson wants to say anything else, I'm happy to hear it, but I think it makes imminent sense that we proceed with this. It's simply a letter to the Minister to get on with this and assist those suburbs, those growing growth corridor suburbs that we've, happy to promote. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano?
I haven't got anything further to add, thank you.
Councillors? Sorry, Councillor, I missed that.
I said I haven't got anything further to add, thank you.
Okay, I'm waiting with bated breath, Councillor Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I was looking forward to getting an explanation as to why this motion should go ahead. So as I've not got it, I've not got much to add. Thank you.
How convenient. Okay. Given there was someone against, now move the motion. Those in favour? It's Councillor McNamara, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Scanlon and Councillor Richardson. I've got you, Councillor Parry. Okay. They were all for the motion, so therefore the motion is carried.
Thank you.
And 2 against. Okay, that takes us now to C 1.3 and Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, councillors, my motion is that council resolve to 1. Note the efforts of staff to direct the owner or administrator to clean up the Dayton Shopping Centre site, lots 2 and 3 Coast Road and lot 23 Arthur Street, Dayton. 2. Direct the CEO to obtain legal access to the site and proceed to clear the Dayton Shopping Centre site, said lots, by removing all dumped material / building rubble, level the site and then re-establish a secure fence around the site. And 3. Permit the CEO to fund this work as soon as possible by the most appropriate means within the existing 2021 budget. The reason being that the site is an eyesore and blight on the landscape and potential health risk, and the community deserve to have this site cleared and made safe.
Councillor Catalano. Who was the seconder? You were?
haven't got one yet.
You seconded it?
Well, that was actually just moving.
Just moved the
Yeah,
motion.
so I'm asking you seconding it? I expected you to.
He hasn't
is there
actually spoken to the
okay,
motion
is there a
yet.
seconder?
Yes, I'm the seconder.
Seconder?
Thank
okay,
you.
Well, you wish to speak? Good.
Councillor Kiley hasn't
you can open
spoken to the
debate.
motion yet.
Oh, hang on, sorry, Councillor. Is there anything against? There is. Righto, Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, this is an absolute eyesore.
It's all right. Carry on.
Thank you. We've tried in a motion that I put forward to you in March. This council in March failed to try and look at other means to deal with this mess. That failed on the basis that the site is under administration and therefore it would be unlikely that we would get the money back, but that hasn't perturbed me, put me off in putting another motion forward. This is not the most ideal outcome. I'm looking for ratepayer funds to fund this out of the current budget. Due to the COVID crisis, we've had a number of events and the like that haven't been proceeded upon by staff, and therefore I think there would be some savings in the budget to make this work, to get this work done. Councillors, the Dayton community deserve this. We've got a new bridge going over the highway into Dayton to join Dayton and Caversham. This bridge will take traffic right beside this absolute bomb site. It's an appalling indictment on, well, I'd hate to say the community, but possibly on us that we haven't managed it so that well in the past that we end up with this situation. I implore you to permit the CEO to go ahead with this clean-up using funding from the current budget and get this done as soon as possible. The community deserve it, and I'll make the point that in the current round of rate increases, that the Dayton community were subject to quite a considerable, I believe, well, an increase across the board in the Dayton community, but still they're left with this mess in the centre of their suburb, and it is the centre of the suburb. It was the shopping centre that we as a council approved, and yet it looks appalling. It's a danger to the community. It's coming up to summer, and last summer the grass dried out and there was a contractor in there trying to slash it and there was dust going everywhere. But I asked staff to halt that because we're aware of asbestos in the ground there. So there's no point going in and slashing that ground in the summertime, because you're going to be throwing dust and potentially asbestos into the area, so I wouldn't like to see that happen again. But so therefore we've got the problem, it remains a fire risk in the summer period. So this suburb, these ratepayers deserve this. It's an absolute mess. Let's get on and clean it up. We don't know how long this site will sit there into the future. So it's a health risk, it's a safety risk, it's an eyesore. Let's get on and fix it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano as a seconder.
Yes, thank you. This is an enormously frustrating issue for the residents and ratepayers of Dayton because it's gone on for so long. It's gone on for at least 8 years, and it's caused them an enormous amount of unhappiness, and bitterness and criticism has been levelled towards the city, which is actually not good for the city either. So it appears, I've only been on council a short while, but nothing was done at all about this shopping centre site, despite the fact that it's been there for at least 8 years, a total mess, until last year when I asked council if we could, I asked staff if we could put some pressure on the owners, and after that there was an action in the Midland Magistrates Court. The owners didn't attend apparently, and a fine was imposed, and City was, granted the order. Yes, it should be cleaned up. And at the beginning of this year, there was high hopes that the liquidators would go in there and clean it up. And they said they were obtaining quotes to do so, and nothing has happened. There have been machines running around in there kicking up dust, but there's been no clean up, and I mean it really is an absolute mess. I mean there's just piles and piles of really rubbish and smashed house. Some houses been smashed. It's a real mess. And yet, in March this year, Council gave an extension, an approval for another 2-year extension to that shopping centre site. So I'm suggesting now that we just push things along a bit more. And I know this is an impost to ratepayers from other areas, but I just want to put this into context, and the context I want to put it into is we're talking about $80,000. Now, actually, if we consider that the mayoral ball will cost $60,000, and we're talking about a benefit at the mayoral ball for, I don't even know, less than 100 actual City of Swan ratepayers, when we're talking about $80,000, which is not much more than the $60,000 for the mayoral dinner, I should say, not the ball, the dinner. And thousands of people in Dayton benefit from it. I mean, that is the context here. And really, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I think just about everybody in the City of Swan would agree that thousands of people should be able to benefit rather than a small number for any $80,000 that the city might contribute out of the ratepayers' funds. And we're at the point where there's no other practical solution. And I'm not even sure if there isn't a way for us ultimately to actually recover those funds, either through a caveat when the land is eventually sold after the liquidator has actually sold it, or administrator has actually sold it on, to recover $80,000. I mean, it is an enormous site. It's worth a hell of a lot of money, either as a shopping centre site or a retail site, or as a residential site. $80,000 is not going to be a lot of money to pay back
1 minute, Councillor.
For those future developers. If we can put caveats on people's properties for not paying rates, I'm sure that we can do the same thing for this clean-up that we will undertake. So I'm suggesting that we give Dayton residents and ratepayers an opportunity to feel proud of the suburb that they live in, and for them to feel really grateful and happy that the City of Swan has finally come good and is going to invest in them and invest in their suburb. And I really implore you, please, to vote with this, because Dayton people really need to get this site cleaned up. It's just driving them mad, and it's not good for the city. It's not good for us to have that criticism
Thank you,
levelled
Councillor.
against
That's your
us.
5 minutes.
Thank you.
Speakers against the motion. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, first things first, it's not on the council budget. So the request from the mover that the CEO go and find some money in the budget, well, don't see how he can. It's not on the budget. Now, here's the thing. We all recognise it's a disaster. We all recognise that the landowner went bust, and to try and turn around and blame the city for that, because I heard that in debate, that's just downright wrong. How can the city be responsible for someone who's made a commercial decision to go into business and goes bust? Now, here's another aspect. Mr. CEO, is there any identified asbestos on the site that you're aware of?
I have to take that on notice, but the possibility as being a house built in the 70s is likely, but I haven't actually seen the reports, but there may be.
Yeah, but we don't know that there is or isn't. So the other thing is that...
Mayor, sorry, Councillor Henderson. I believe in the previous discussion in March we had confirmation from staff that there was asbestos on the site.
And that might more than likely there is, Mr Mayor. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the update on that. So, okay, take a circumstance in Hazelmere. That area, those people, those landowners, need drainage done. They pay a levy each year to improve their area. Not all of the City of Swan, just in that area. So if the residents in that area want this so much and so badly, well, they should effectively, in the same way as Hazelmere, be paying a levy for that, because it can't be charged to everyone in the City of Swan if it's local to their area. So when knocking on the door and saying, what do you think about that ugly site, should the city fix it up? The next answer should be, oh, do you mind paying a levy to pay for it? I think maybe they wouldn't be so happy if that were the case. So they're really the key things that I wanted to talk about, but the other one was that the nexus between Mayor's Dinner and fixing this up for Dayton simply doesn't work. The Mayor's Dinner is a overall response to produce an income for all of the city, whereas this is a benefit just for the area of Dayton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speak up for the motion. Question, Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To yourself or the CEO, are we any further advanced on whether this property is reaching some sale?
Mr CEO.
There has been some discussion, Mr Councillor, but I can't verify either way how advanced they are, because as with these discussions, people show interest, but whether or not till someone signs on the dotted line or it moves forward, the answer is no.
Right, back to us. Speaker for the motion. Question, Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, I'd just like to ask the CEO if it is possible to put a caveat on the property, or whatever the term might be, for the future owner to cover the costs incurred by the city.
CEO.
If it was not in receivership, that would be the case, but it is in receivership, and therefore we've been told legally we can't do it.
Right. Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Zanino.
I've got a question.
Yep.
It's been stated that the site is contaminated. If the site is contaminated and it's been verified, the City of Swan should be able to issue an order to the administrators to have it cleaned up, and the administrators should be responsible for cleaning it up and then withholding the amount that it's cost them from the sale of the property rather than keeping it.
You have a question or are you entering debate?
So what I'm saying is that right or is it wrong? Can't the City of Swan issue an infringement or to the administrators to have it cleaned up?
See it.
Mr Mayor, it comes back to this question of degree of contamination. And there are a lot of houses within the City of Swan, and I would suggest 10, 20, 30, 40,000 houses in the City of Swan that have got asbestos in. Does that mean that that land in which they're located on is contaminated? I don't think so. And that's your problem. Until it's knocked over or until someone says it's contaminated, that's the problem. So, yes, because of the age in which it was built, it's probably got eaves or material that it's contaminated, but it's not a contaminated site as such, Councillor. That's your problem. And because it's in receivership, it might be, it's one of those instances from the previous advice is that you can't go back and charge it against them because it's in receivership and it's covered by other laws.
Mr Mayor?
Councillor Congleton.
Thank you. Then please tell me who determines whether it is or isn't a contaminated site?
Normally DUA. Mr Bishop, thank you.
Mr Bishop, you got a comment there?
Yeah, fine.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct. So basically there is a contaminated sites register of all properties that are confirmed or suspected as a contaminated site in WA. That's managed by DUA. So any property owner who suspects or any relevant person can report a site to DUA in regards if they have evidence that a site's contaminated. As per the question earlier to the CEO, who's taken it on notice, staff did investigate the asbestos question previously, but we'll have to go back in regards just to confirm what the outcome of that was, and that deals with the asbestos question.
Thank you. Councillor McNamara.
Yeah, it is again to Mr Bishop. Is it not true, Mr Bishop? Thank you very much, Councillor Congleton. Is it not true, Mr Bishop, that it was Councillor Catalano that asked the question about the contaminated site and had said that residents had actually indicated that there may be some contamination of asbestos on that particular site? It was actually Councillor Catalano that asked that question, and I believe that after the investigation by the city staff, that there was nothing definite found.
Mr Bishop.
Just bear with me, Mr Mayor. We're just looking at the notes when this was looked into previously.
Mayor, I might be able to shed some light on that if you like.
Well, just let Mr Bishop, I think he's reading some technical data.
Okay. So when this was investigated by city staff, environmental health officers, from a site assessment, 5 samples were collected and sent to a laboratory for confirmation testing. Results confirmed that 4 out of 5 samples contained asbestos. So basically they did confirm there was asbestos on site. Therefore they have discussed that with the relevant staff at the Department of Health and who have advised that it is warranted that a notification of a contaminated site to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation occur. This will trigger the contaminated sites process will apply, which basically goes back to what I was talking about a bit earlier. So it's been reported to DUA, the Department of Environmental Regulation, to consider it now as to whether it warrants being on the register.
Thank you, Mr Bishop, for that report.
Councillor Sparrow, you have a question? Go back to where we were.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I will ask a question.
You've got a further question?
I do have. Given the report has now gone to DUA and DUA's roles and responsibilities in relation to a contaminated site, I don't know whether we're in a position to defer or suspend this particular item until we understand what the actions of DUA is.
Is it? Okay. Well, hang on. We're dealing with Councillor Congdon's question. Mr CEO or Mr Bishop?
Through you, Mr Mayor, once a site is reported to the Department of Environment, they will investigate that report. That often requires the property owner, in this case the administrators, to provide further evidence against that allegation. That obviously can take months to go through a process, but ultimately the Department of Environment will form an opinion based on the evidence. They may even require that the property owner contract an appropriate environmental consultants to do further site assessments. It really depends on the context of the concern.
Thank you. So, Councillor Congdon, is there any question?
Not really, Mr Mayor, because the answer I've got is that if DEWA get the report, I want to know what the actions are thereafter on receiving the report, which Mr Bishop had said they could do this, this, this and this. Really, I'm talking about whether DEWA then say, yes, it's contaminated, then the action is to then, the question, is the administrator then obliged to go ahead and clean up the site? Is the administrator say, well, no, bad luck, boys, I don't care what that is? This is all the questions that are not being faced in this discussion, because if we spend the money, I'm going to debate, Mr Mayor.
Mr Van Lien, you've got a comment. Minded to pick your microphone up, Leon?
Turn it on.
Sorry for that.
Mr Mayor, if you look at the legal advice that was provided in March this year, my take on that is that even if DEWA or anyone can instruct somebody to go and clean out the property, say for instance they say, okay, local government should go out and clean the property, under the from that legal advice I took it that under the Corporations Act, if a property is under administration, there's no owner during that time, so you'll incur that cost, and what that legal advice indicated is that you've got no chance to get the cost back. That I think that is the point that's relevant.
Thank you, Mr Van Lien. Okay, go back to Speaker for the motion. Yes, Councillor Catalano.
So, do we have any idea actually how long that process, the DEWA process, might take? I know you said months, but what do you think it might take in terms of before they get back to us, or do we need to contact them again and follow it up?
Mr Bishop?
Mr Mayor, I can't give you a time frame, and the best we could do is follow up with DEWA and get an update from them. But my experience with contaminated sites, it's a minimum of months, sometimes years are involved in regards the further investigations and a final determination. Ultimately, once a final determination is made, it goes onto a public register.
Yeah, quickly, yep.
My question is, the city can clean it up even if there's asbestos on there, though, can't they?
Yes.
Who's going to answer that one?
We have to incur the cost.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Councillors, given it's 7:28 and there are a number of questions you may wish to ask, might I suggest someone move a deferral of this item to get that relevant information back from DEWA? Councillor Perry, are you prepared to move that motion?
We already have a motion on the board, unfortunately, Mr Mayor.
You do. You do. You're
Got
correct.
a question, Mr Mayor.
Question?
Yeah, just basic question of the volume of material, just sort of how much is there?
My understanding, Mr Mayor, that the cost of the removal of and levelling of the site was somewhere close to $80,000, was it, Mr Coden? Thank you. What's the figure?
Yes, a very rough estimate was of about $80,000 was done by staff, but that was just done from aerial photographs and assuming there was no contamination and just based on a number of days with loaders and trucks to take the material out. So if we were going to do it, we'd need to get an accurate cost from a contractor.
And core quotes and so on. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mayor, I'm going to ask that the motion be put.
Okay. Well, you can. Yeah. Well, just check, but I think you might have to get... Someone else can move it for you, Councillor, because you've already moved this motion. Okay. I have a mover in Councillor Henderson that the motion be put. Those in favour of the motion being put? Councillors, I need 11 for the motion to be put. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, motion failed.
Yeah, 7:30, Mr Mayor.
Well, not by mine, I've got about 1 minute left. So are there any further speakers?
Just confirming this will be put off to the September ordinary council meeting, is that correct?
If we stop now, we pick it up where we are right
in
now.
September.
Yep.
Thank
so,
you.
Quick question, Mr Mayor. We're not going to adjourn this until Monday or something like that? I mean,
We had a motion already that Council endorsed to move the remaining items of Part C to the next council meeting. Councillor Lucas moved it.
Well, Mr Mayor, can I suggest that we consider an alternate motion then to reconvene this adjourned meeting at a more appropriate time, such as Monday?
I've already got a council motion, Councillor. It was
and you
voted,
supported it.
At 7:30, Councillors.
Okay. So in that case, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an in-meeting revocation to change that decision.
Well, unfortunately, Councillors, at 7:30, I've got a motion to close the meeting at 7:30.
I'd like to second that, thank you.
Well, I move that we put that revocation motion to the vote right now. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, those in favour of the revocation motion? Motion fails. Thank you, Councillors. The meeting's adjourned. Closed, in fact, till September.